Okay, so if you've been watching my channel, you'll probably notice I started a new thing yesterday with a 2-minute video, and that's what I'm going to be doing for the near future. Just releasing videos that I'm doing outside of live streams as 2-minute videos. There'll probably be some exceptions to that, but that's the main format. And then I'm going to be doing more deep dives using the live streaming format. And so if you want to catch some of these live streams, I don't usually put up a lot of time in advance. It's usually a last minute thing, but definitely check those out. And if you're just signing on, let me know. Say something in the chat because I was having a chat problem yesterday with YouTube. And so if someone could just write something in the chat, and I'll see if it's popping up on the actual feed and my dashboard, or if I need to go do something on my phone, just let me know. Because as I was saying, it was giving me some issues. So just let me know. Someone say something. That would be super useful. Otherwise, I will just check on my mobile device. Cool. So today we're going to start with our main thing that we're going to start with is just talking about the difference between sculpture and alchemy. These are two of the powerhouse synthesizers. There's other ones inside Logic, but these are two of the default Logic synths. And Alchemy is the most recent addition to the Logic family. We've had it now for a little while, but this was certainly one of the newer things, and sculpture's been around significantly longer. And so I thought I would just kind of explain some of the differences between these two instruments, and give you a chance if you want to hear them and ask questions. Then that would be great. I do have the chat turned on for later, so that if you're watching this later, there should be a way to turn on the chat so you can see it even though you're not watching it live. So just keep that in mind. Okay, cool. So first and foremost, there are some pretty big differences between these instruments. I would say that if I'm reaching for an instrument to do some sort of sound design or ambient bed, or something that has a lot of motion or morphing, then I could easily grab either one of these instruments because they both excel in those areas. That being said, there are a few sounds that I lean towards for sculpture, and then a bunch of things that I lean towards for alchemy. But just to give you some context right off the bat, let me add another instrument track here for a second. I don't use some of the other synths very often anymore because these two tend to be able to do almost everything. I use retro synth quite a bit for traditional subtractive synthesis. I think that it sounds really good for just trying to mimic the kind of like a Moog type sound, and also it has a FM synthesis engine, so I do that for the retro synth, and it also I'll just load it up here. It also has a table synthesizer as well, which really we don't have in any of the other instruments. So this one still has its place for easily getting certain sounds. But the main one that I've stopped using as much would be the ES2. This does have a vector synthesis mode, which is easiest to really do in this if you're looking for a true vector type synthesis sound, which uses these nodes where you can program the synth to sound differently, each of them, and attach a time to them, and it'll cycle through those sounds. But we can do similar vector style synthesis in both sculpture and alchemy. So I don't really find myself reaching for this particular synth all that often anymore. And then there's a bunch of other synths which are here that are really almost more for compatibility issues than anything. So the the FM synth, the EFM1. I don't think I've used this one in years now. Although, I mean, there's still some interesting stuff. The ensemble synth, I really do like because it's a kind of a sound from like the 90s and 2000s, and even before that with some of the other, early string type synth sounds that this gets pretty nicely. The vocoder synth is a whole different ballgame. But the ES1, that's really just a compatibility thing. I haven't used this one in I haven't really used it for like probably 10 years on any real project. And then I do see a comment coming through. Okay, good. Their comments are working both places from Amit Mishra. How to design a kick drum in Alchemy. Okay, cool. So we're going to take that off for a second. The real truth is that I would never use Alchemy to design a kick drum because we have other tools which are really better suited to do kick drums, like just normal kick drums. So if we're looking at kick drums, the first thing I would do is go to the drum synth tool, either mono or stereo, depending on what, but most of the time mono is what we need for that. But you can always... you'd have to switch it out to the full stereo one. But we have here kicks. We have a heavy kick, a hard kick, a punch kick, air kick, tight kick. And then we have a number of different parameters, up to 8 on any of these different instruments, to change this with pitch and tone, saturation, shape, sweep, decay. This is a synth engine for this, and so you end up with kick sounds. And so if I'm looking for a synthesized kick sound, this is where I would go first. Not because you couldn't in Alchemy, but because if that's the sound I'm going for, why not go to the tool that's going to give me what I want in a lot more efficient manner? And so that's my thought process most of the time. If you're looking for, I don't even know if I've ever looked in here for this, but I'm sure if we did drums and we did kits, I don't know, there's not that many in the preset engine here. Let's do hits. No, those are going to be a little different. So I don't know so with the electronic focus, we only have 75 presets. And so you could look through some of these. Here's like a tough 808 bass, which is going to be used like a kick for sure. So there's a few things if you want to actually go through and look and see how they created them. The one nice thing then about this, so say I'm using this 808. Oh wait, I'm on the wrong track. Let's actually listen to what I was playing here. I was like, that's not sounding right. So the nice thing about Alchemy, of course, is with a preset like this, we have the 8 different options on our performance pads that we can go through and have a lot more character right out of the gate than just with the drum synth itself. What do you mean by any shortcut? You're asking if you want to tune your kick to any key or any shortcut. So tell me what you mean by shortcut. But the drum synth is already tuned. So this one, for instance, because it is synthesized, has key tracking turned on. If you turned off key tracking, no matter what key I push, it's going to sound the same. So key tracking is the key element here to be able to tune that to whatever you're doing. So anyway, explain more what you're asking, and then I'll see if I can explain more about that. And don't forget, so say you want to combine the best of both worlds. This is one area where Alchemy is certainly more advanced. So I'm going to load up I have this drum synth, right? And there's a few different ways. We could use the auto sampler, but I don't even know if we need to do that really. Let's just record a note here. Right. So say we've created what we think is the perfect sound here. Let's actually, let's see, what do we want to do here? Let's bounce in place. New track. I'm going to just do a new track so I leave the original. So here's that sound. I just bounced this in place. And then I could pull this over to Alchemy right here. So I could say I want this to be spectral, granular, or additive. I don't know. Let's do additive for this. And now I've got that sound analyzed through that particular engine. So I could pull this out. Let's do this one as spectral for a second. And then I've got all of the Alchemy tools now. So what I originally created with the drum synth up here, and I'm going to unmute that for a second. That sound now, it's a little softer, but this is that sound in this engine. So now I could come through and use any of the tools in here and create that same thing. Now I don't know why. Let's see if the editor for a second. Edit right here. It's like I don't actually see that file in there. So something went a little bit sideways. It's right there. Weird. So something's a little bit funky with that one. I'd have to figure out where that file left, or maybe I was in the wrong Alchemy. Let's just see. That's probably, yeah, that was what it is. When I have 4 Alchemies now loaded, always double check that you're in the right one. Because now I can come in here and actually, let's go to A, edit. This is the file. So if there's a little delay there, restart it. We could tune it differently if we want to. But more importantly, we could come through here and do some changes. So I could draw in another overtone. And do a lot of different things with this. And so not all of those are going to be great. Some of those are going to be very bad ideas. But we can come through and manipulate this now using all of the Alchemy tools. Could I do this with sculpture? No, actually, I can't do this with sculpture. I can't come in and load a file. So this is on the check boxes of which of these synths can do really cool and powerful things. This is a big win for Alchemy because it means I can take any file that I'm using and just pull it into Alchemy and then start to mangle it. And I think that that's a huge strength of this system. Okay, so how does sculpture, does it do percussive sounds? I mean, that's the question we'll start with then, because we're looking at this right now. And of course, anything that has an envelope, which is what defines the shape of a particular sound, anything that has an envelope can be used to create percussive sounds. And so I think that this certainly has a lot of percussive abilities. And in fact, if we can come down here to the presets, for instance, and see like the tribal drums. And so we can do really, really texturally rich sounds. So it becomes more of a question of, do you understand what a percussive sound sounds like? I mean, not necessarily sounds like, but what are the elements of it? Does it have a short attack? How soon does it die out? What happens as it dies out? Is it tonal? Is it more, uh, across the spectrum like white noise? What are the elements that go into that? And then you can recreate some of it. In this case, you just do it very differently. While we can use some sound sources in Alchemy, and one of the best things about Alchemy is that you have all of these elements here. For the most part, if we don't have anything loaded into Alchemy, it's not going to. The default is like a saw wave, but it's like sample based to a certain extent as its complete engine. And so everything has to start with some audio file that is the sound source that then you manipulate using all of the tools. In sculpture, that's not how it is at all. In fact, what we have in sculpture is a modeled instrument. And so we start with this string that's over here. It's the green line. And if I push a note, you'll see it moves and activates. It used to be that this started off by default as disabled, and so nothing would happen. But now they've actually enabled it by default, so whenever you load it up, you'll actually see where it's coming from. I think at one point, when we were really worried about resources on computers, it really made sense to have all of the extra stuff not necessarily enabled if it was going to take resources. But nowadays, we're all about just making everything resource hungry, and because your computer can handle everything, right? Kind of. So we have the three objects here: object 1, object 2, object 3, and then each one of these does a little different thing. This first one is a strike. So of course, for a percussive sound, a strike would make sense. Object 2 is a mass, so that's something that it's attached to. And you'll see that there's a different list of options here under Object 2. Object 1 has impulse through blow. Object 2 has impulse through blow, but it also has disturb through external. And number 3 has disturb through dampen, which is the one second to last and the middle one. External is the side chain. So Object 1 has a set of things. Object 3 has a set of things. Object 2 has 1 and 3 plus the external option. So number 2 is kind of the Swiss Army knife, so to speak, of the objects here. And then just like a guitar, we have pickups, A and B, and those can move around. And then we place the objects on the string where they actually activate the string, and the pickups are where the sound is... not sound, it's like all internal digital code, ones and zeros, but it's hypothetically or theoretically where that string is measured as it goes out into the other parts of this instrument. So instead of starting with just any file, we start with these objects, and they create this environment for what happens next. The green string here is represented by the visuals, but in the middle, this is the material and the resolution and the tension mod and the media loss, all of these on different types of things. So we can create a very complex material from either nylon, wood, glass, or steel, but really what that means is inner loss and stiffness. And so we're using nylon, wood, glass, and steel as descriptors for the type of what the material does. Is it very firm and dense? Is it, does it vibrate easily? Does it have some sort of resonance with it? I mean, it's hard to describe things like that, but certainly this little thing becomes very powerful as we... Yeah, so I can see why they're using that particular sound there. The string then is attached to this body EQ, which is like an impulse response type situation where we have all of these analysis patterns, or these, well, they're impulse responses of these different bodies: acoustic guitar 1, violins, ukulele, alto flute. So we get to attach the string to an actual body of an instrument, and then we put it through an envelope, and we get to do things with effects. So then we have delay and a wave shaper, and then our modulation section down below, which gets very much more complicated, but my favorite being the morph section, which allows us to set up 5 different settings of this instrument, and then use this this one point to move between those and create different sounds. And so you can see as I move this around, the parameters above are all shifting around. So I mean, that's pretty complicated stuff to have 5 different instruments that you can morph between, and you can set a morph pattern so you can actually record as it moves around over time, and then you create these complex soundscapes that are like amazing. So in terms of this engine, so that's a basic overview of this thing without getting too much in depth. I would say if you're going to use this and you have a relatively modern computer, a few things that I would do right off the bat. The first one is open up the bottom arrow and change the render mode to high definition. By default, it's set to basic, and the high definition sounds better. Now let's look, for instance, just at what we're giving up here with our CPU. So I'm getting to 25% on one of the thread, although there's a little bit of chatter there without me playing, so it's not quite 25%. We can probably take that a little higher, but let's go back to basic for a second. Let's move this down here. So half of that approximately, but let's do something that's a little bit different. Let's do something that angel bells here. Okay, so that sounds fine. Let's do the high definition mode for a second, see if this adds. So of course, with additional voices and sustain and things, it would go even higher. But that's definitely a noticeably higher spike in one area. Let me tell you, if you were using an older computer back to like, you know, the Core 2 Duo, or even some of the more basic i7s, you're looking at like half of your processing could have been easily sucked up by that. The new processors, anything silicon based, and you'll see I go from there to 25% on one of the threads, which if you have a full project can still be a significant increase, but it's not so bad overall. We can come up with some of these sounds in the Alchemy world. It's not like it's so exclusive that you can't. But if I come through here and I say, you know what, I like the plucked instruments. I use the Telecaster sample, or not sample, but the preset here. And I can play it just like a keyboard player plays it. But I like the Telecaster sound on here because it's relatively accurate. And then I can come through here and use something like the scripter, and let's do the guitar strummer right there. I was really close to it. with the arpeggiator here. It's like I need a click track so that it actually times out right. And then we put on something like the amp designer. Sure. And let's find something a little bit, I don't even know. Right, so then it's like as a pad sound, or not a pad necessarily, but as a less featured instrument, something that's lower in your mix. Say maybe it's like a heavy keyboard song, or there's a lot of drums, and you needed to add just like a guitar thing somewhere in that track. You could use this and get away with it. And if you program the MIDI well, then no one's going to really notice. And so I think that this particular flow can be really useful. And it's creating a new guitar sound every time you push a key. It's taking all these parameters, putting it through this whole engine of sculpture, and on the other side, it comes out as a guitar sound. Let me, real quick, so I don't play any of the wrong ones that I've messed up here. Let me do Alchemy again. Because it's like, yes, we can do a guitar sound in here too. There's nothing like stopping us from doing that. Let's do acoustic guitar. Ambient, yeah. I don't even know if we have any. I don't use this one for this as much, but let's see if there's any that say just like straight ahead guitar of some sort. I don't. I'll have to look, but acoustic pluck. And this one has additional features like the rich pluck. There's a little bit of delay on my stream. So you can see this isn't like, oh, here's a guitar. This is like, here are many different colors of guitar. But we can come through. Let's turn off all these other parts of this. And let's come to our effects and turn off the delay and the reverb. And let's actually come in here and see what we've got. So this is just a sampled guitar. And so we could be using any sampled instrument for this. Alchemy did not create this guitar. Somebody recorded it and put it in and then added all those effects and things. So really Alchemy is an effects engine more than almost anything. That being said, when you start getting into like the other parts of this with the spectral, the granular, or the additive, I mean, those are re-synthesizing some of the original samples, but they still need the original samples in order to do it for the most part. A couple exceptions to that, but I mean, nothing major. And so we rely on that original guitar recording, whereas this sculpture is creating it for every moment. Okay, some more comments are coming. Let me see what we've got going on here. Ellie Winter says, I'm trying to use sculpture right now and the default patch does not let me play more than one note at once. Any thoughts? All presets are acting monophonic. So, I mean, do you have your voices set to more than one up here? That's the only thing I can think of. And so if this is set to more than one voice, then my guess is that it's something outside of sculpture that would be causing it. So I'd have to see. I mean, because I'm doing, let me turn off that MIDI of scripter for a second. Yeah, so my polyphony is working. Is it also probably you've also have the keyboard set to poly, not mono too. So I'm guessing that you're not missing any of the obvious things. So I don't know. That's interesting that you're having that issue. I would check your keyboard, maybe turn it on or off, or unplug it, replug it. Maybe start a fresh session with Logic to make sure that it's not something in your session that would be saved in the project settings. And then, as you just said, restart Logic. And then Gunther, yes, I've been really active these last few days, but that's because in 2 weeks I will be inactive for a while. So I'm trying to just make sure I get all my stuff going before I'm taking a hiatus for a period of time. I'll probably still, so you'll still get some videos when I'm out of the country. I'll definitely be posting some things, but it's going to be a little bit more focused on what we're doing on our this study abroad I'm leading. And so you'll get videos from when we're doing impulse responses in some of the palaces and castles we're going to. And you'll be getting some footage from the recording sessions we're doing in Prague. And you'll probably get some vlog style videos when we're just visiting the spas and all kinds of stuff. And so you'll certainly still get some content, but it will not be probably me sitting in front of Logic and doing this, and I won't be doing any live streams. But I want to make sure that this channel is useful for people and you come here for information. That's my main goal. And so we got to make sure that we're continuing that trend. And then, yes, Gregory Buttocks, you can ask a question here. Ellie Winter, that's weird. I wonder why it's doing that. Monophonic, so just one note at a time. Trying to think. Load a different instrument on the same track to make sure that it's polyphonic. Like do like a retro synth on there. So just like swap out the sculpture, and just put a different instrument. Make sure it's doing it. For those of you who didn't see my stream, I don't know if I did a stream yesterday or the day before. I'm super excited. I don't know when exactly it's going to be ordered, but I'm getting the new Mac Studio Ultra, and it's going to be freaking amazing. I'm super pumped. We'll be doing lots of videos when that comes. Gregory says, I want to start producing music, but I feel discouraged because I feel I am late to start. Gonna turn 21 in a few months. You are not late to start at all. In fact, I've known people who started this in their like 60s and they make some cool stuff. Just depends on what your goal is. Because if you're like, I want to be like a really famous producer, then get to work. But if, on the other hand, you just want to do this for fun, then do it at your own pace. 21, man, I don't miss being 21. I'm one of those people that enjoys everything that comes next. And I'm in my 40s now. And 40s has been my best decade yet. And so I've got no complaints. I don't wish I can go back. I'm not one of those people who's nostalgic for the return. But anyway. Gunther says, I have one comment about Alchemy. They removed the reference on the filters to the analog synths that they were modeled after. which is a shame because I like to know the character the filter is supposed to represent. And I'm guessing, because I noticed that at some point. Um, Let me go into Alchemy and show people what you're talking about. So I think you're talking about right in here with all of these filters. Um, if I'm remembering correct. But I mean, you can't reference stuff, and I don't even know if they were they here when it was owned by Apple, or is that just back when it was Camel Audio that owned them? Because I don't know if I think I feel like these were, since they first pulled it into Logic, I thought these were just the sharp, smooth, edgy, rich, clean, gritty, and edgy. So then at some point they were probably like, oh crap, we should probably pull these out because Apple's not a company that wants to. I mean, a lot of companies say, ooh, I see our name inside one of your projects. We know you can settle with us because you're a filthy rich company. I'm sure that I'd love to see the screenshot too, because it's like been just long enough that I remember that from the Camel Audio days. For anyone who doesn't know, Alchemy was not something that Apple made. I mean, Apple doesn't really make much. They acquired and have refined, but certainly this is not. I mean, this was a cool plugin long before Apple owned it, and now it's just part of Apple. Yeah, sam.mcguire@gmail.com. And that's not a secret email. I don't. My email addresses are published all over the internet for various things, but yeah, that's the one. Oh, so Gregory made another comment that I skipped over for a second. Because everywhere I see musicians are way ahead and I feel discouraged. I don't know. I mean, I look on the internet and I see like a 4-year-old playing like a Mozart piano concerto, right? And that makes me never want to play the piano ever again. But I don't think what I'm doing is the same as what they're doing. And I see, every once in a while over my career as a professor, I've applied for positions at other universities. I've taken at least one job because I've been at 2 different universities. But a number of years ago, I applied for a job someplace. And when they called me to tell me that I did not get the job, they said, you were perfect for this job, which I was like, why are you talking to me right now about this? But they said, you're perfect for this job. You're already doing everything we're asking. But one of the candidates, had won 5 Grammys. And I was like, look, if that's your priority, if you want somebody who's a Grammy winner, then I don't want this job. That's not what I do. I don't win Grammys. I teach students, and I've made teaching students my life's work. I make music, and I do projects, but everything I do is in one way or another to become a better teacher, and that's a day in and day out challenge. That's not like something that comes easy. Mastering technology and learning how to use all the tools, and then finding a way that you can teach it to somebody. I mean, it's a hard job. And to say that they wanted somebody who's won Grammys who didn't have teaching experience to be teaching their students, I think they're all idiots. And that's not out of jealousy. I mean, literally, if that's what's their priority, I think they're idiots. So, controversial. Cool. Let me go check that out right now. Got my phone here. I'm going to look at the screenshot. I do have mail. Cool. Well, that's good information. I'm gonna make a video about that. I'll give you credit, Gunther, obviously. But that's the kind of stuff people should know. Right? I mean, it's like, where are the roots? I once made a video about the vintage equalizers we have in Logic. And man, I got more hate mail about that video than almost anything else. I don't know why, but maybe it's because I put like a clickbaity type icon on it, whatever. But these 3 EQs, this stuff drives me crazy. I like these and I don't like these at the exact same time. These 3 EQs that they put in here, because it's like called vintage tube EQ. And if you don't recognize what these 3 EQs are modeled after, I mean, it's like, let's just call it what it is, right? Pay the extra $10 to get the licensing rights. It's not $10. It's much more if Apple's doing it. But pay the money to actually call these what they are: the Pultec, the API, and the Neve, because there's no mistake that these are what these are modeled after. So instead of just giving them random names and somewhat similar graphics, let's call them the name. Let's let people know the heritage of what these tools are, so that when they use these, they can say, this is, modeled after a Pultec EQ, and it's, one of the greatest EQs ever made. And it's one of the quirkiest ones too. And yet they don't even, it's like they could have improved this just a little bit if they're going to do it this way and say, let's explain to people what this even means. I mean, you can go to the manual, I'm sure. I don't know if the manual is that great with this. Let's pull that open real quick too. Logic Pro Effects. Because the Pultec EQ does something that really no other EQs do. And I think it's worth talking about. I'm going to look right now. I want to make sure I do this before I just ramble on about it, but a lossless passive equalizer. So they are talking about that part of it. Although design, I mean, it is possible to have a digital lossless passive equalizer, but it's not the same as having an analog one that's made from electronics. So the fact that they're pretending that it's exactly the same here is again a misnomer. I think it's a missed opportunity. Do they talk about how you can boost and cut the same frequency simultaneously? It's not really. I mean, this thing is so weird. You can boost and attenuate the exact same frequency simultaneously. And there's reasons why we might do that with the Pultec. I mean, it's such a missed opportunity to actually dive into the history of these and teach people about them a little bit. And so I think that it's kind of sad that that's the case, but let me go back to the comments. Ellie Winter had to step away for a minute. What is up with Alchemy? We never actually sorted your issue. But we were talking about how they removed some of the filter labels. And I do like these. I mean, I think that they're flexible in a way, but again, unless you're fully explaining this, so when you load up these by default, they come with the output modeling, Silky for the Neve, Punchy for the API. No, Silky for the Pultec, Punchy for the API, and Smooth for the Neve. But you can switch them. So I can do the Punchy mode on the Neve. So you're getting the character of the API with the tools of the Neve. And then you can actually put it in linear phase mode as well, which is cool. And I don't think people talk enough about that, because I think that's amazing to be able to put a Neve with an API character through a linear phase model. I mean, geez, that's so awesome. And yet these are hidden down, and they didn't even really talk about them that much when this was released. and they don't want to ever write down what they're based off of, even though the graphics are really there. And so it's like this thing where it's a tool that we don't talk about much because for whatever reason, I mean, it's like they're maybe afraid of, getting a lawsuit from those the companies or something, the people who own the brains of those things. Anyway, it's what it is. And certainly it's, there's just tools you can use still. How much do I use those? Not that often, surprisingly, because I tend in my own workflow to get the sounds I want in the instruments. I do so much of the stuff with virtual instruments that I tend to go back to the source to make changes instead of doing it as much later. But every once in a while, I mess around with those, and it's cool, and I like them. We at the university have a set of APIs equipment that we use. We've got one of their line level mixers that have a few of their compressors and EQs on it, and it sounds terrific. We've got not the we used to have one of the old Neve consoles, but then we got one of the Portico consoles, and so we have a bunch of Portico EQs, compression, and preamps and things that are really great. We don't have any Pultecs. Those are relatively expensive and hard to find, and so we just don't have any. But I would love a good pair. I mean, that would be awesome. Other questions that anybody's thinking of as we've been going over stuff? We can go back to the original discussion, which is alchemy versus sculpture. Yeah, Ellie Winter, I actually love step FX and fat FX. Those are two things which I still have never really made a video about. And I think I'm going to do a live stream about them coming up. My new format, of course, the 2-minute videos, because I hear this all the time. This is probably my number one comment that I hear, is that you could have done what you just did in your 12-minute video in like 1 minute. Why do we have to watch 12 minutes when what you could have told us would only take 1 minute? And I agree with that. I think that sometimes the trap of being someone who makes YouTube videos is to try to make YouTube happy instead of our viewers happy. You need to both, obviously, because if viewers don't like what you make, then nobody's going to watch it. But there's always this line where it's like, will YouTube send this to more people if it's a certain length? And it's like I just get in the habit of talking. I like talking anyway. But I want to start this new method of just doing the 2-minute videos up to 3 minutes, as long as 2 is the first number and the time at the end. I want to start making more of those so then people can just like find what they're looking for right away, and then market these live streams, and so people can come on. I'd rather have conversations with you like what we're doing right now with Gunther, who we're talking to LA Winter. You two are always, not always, but you're on a ton of my live streams. And I love that. I love that you come back and we talk, and you've shown me things like we did today with the Alchemy screenshots. And I've learned so much doing some of this stuff that I don't want to like give that part up. But those plugins specifically are so good. Those ones I have used an incredible amount of time, and I really like them. But sometimes it's easiest to go with the easy thing, and so I don't use them all the time. I'll give you a couple examples here. So these ones, let's see, the fat. The only thing I don't like, I wish it was like a blue scheme instead of a brown scheme. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard, but it's true. This is like, I think of this one as like a cool sound channel strip. It's like it just adds a lot of, it's like a character-based channel strip. So you have all of these different elements, the filter, the compressor, um, which are part of a channel strip, and then you have distortion and some modulation type stuff. But you can come through and be like, I want the bandpass to go at the end, or I want the bandpass to go at the beginning. It's like, I like bit crushing, but let's do this later after the compressor, so that the compressor evens out the level before we bit crush, which can make a difference in some cases. Or it's like we have all of these things you can drag around in any order, and it changes how the sound works. I mean, it's an amazing thing for a lot of different things. You can use it in small amounts or large amounts. It's amazing. I just, when I think of what things look like, that's the only thing, which is a small thing, because who cares how it really looks like. But and then the step effects, which is brown, again with blue steps here, but this one can do so many cool timing things that it's really fun. I can think of improvements for both of these that I would love. But for the most part, they're straightforward, they're simple, they sound good, and they can do things which, in a small amount of time, which other things would take a lot longer to do. What is it about the reverb you like in step effects? So there's a reverb unit there. It does. So what I can imagine, and I've done this a few times, is using this as a reverb on a send. So instead of putting this on the original track, this lives on an auxiliary track, and then I send things to it. You just set the reverb mix to 100 at that point, and you can put it before or after some of the other effects and come up with some really cool things. But this becomes a reverb plugin instead of something else, and I think that alone is a technique that not many people are using this for. I can't imagine. Cool. Make a fade to gray preset and the step effects. It's also very fast to set up and get the type of sound I want on the XY pad. I see what you're saying, Gunther, there. Cool. Yeah, I mean, so these are super cool. I think that it's probably long overdue to have a video about this, but I think that there's a lot of stuff here. This again goes back to the problem with the strength and the weakness of Logic, is that there's so much here, and there's an incredible amount of power, but it's also an incredible amount of everything. And so someone comes in and uses this software for the very first time. It's like, I can't even imagine. It's like, I remember using Logic for the very first time, the modern Logic, which was right when Apple bought it. I had used Logic before that. I had a version of Logic from eMagic, and in fact, when I did my very first internship as a student, the guy still was running the original version on an Atari, attached to a bunch of external MIDI units, and when he first sat me down my first week of the internship, he's like, I want to see what you can do with MIDI, and he put me on this thing, and it all felt familiar, and I used it and showed him. He's like, okay, you can internship here, and I was like, okay, and that was the last time we ever used the Atari, but it was a cool machine, and it's like the very first time I used it in the newer versions would have been 2004, 2005, right around there. And this guy had bought this setup, and I was in North Carolina, and he ran a bluegrass studio, and he wanted me to come in, and I was just like, I had just come from using Pro Tools in the studio that day, and he was like, do this in Logic, and I was showing him how to do something, and I was just like, man, I can't do everything I want to do with this. It's like in the main window here, I had like audio. He had an audio file that he wanted to cut something, and you can't cut audio at the sample level in earlier versions of Logic. You had to like go down to the file editor to do it, and it just was so clunky and horrible for audio editing. Most of that's all been fixed, but it just was so painful. And but like using this software as a brand new beginner must be horribly confusing sometimes. It's not at all logical for the most part, and it's not something that's really easy to do. So that's not what I do on my channel. I don't teach beginners how to use Logic, that's for sure. The second most dreaded comment from people who watch videos on my channel are, "You're talking too fast and doing too much, and I couldn't follow." And my initial reaction is, it's like, I'm doing this for free, so take what you get. And I get a little defensive about that because I don't make videos for people who want to go slow. I don't do the intro videos. I don't do the explanation of things. I've tried a couple times, and I lose interest in doing that after about like 5 seconds. I much rather work in Logic at a really high level, and every time I discover something that I think is cool, then I make a video on it. And so it's something I'm interested in. It's something that if I discovered it, I'm pretty sure there's at least 100 people out there who didn't know it. You know what I mean? And so it's like, that's my gauge for fun, for making content for this. If you want to learn how to use Logic from me at a very basic level, take my university course called Introduction to Logic Pro. Because I start at the very beginning. I've got PowerPoint presentations, and we do that all, but I only do that when I'm working with individual students, because then I can go to the student and say, "Ooh, you just like mastered this whole skill. Here, do the next thing." And you get to see them like move on to the next task. And it's like a more involved process rather than one where I'm just like having to make brain dead videos for myself. Anyway, that's right. And so Gunther is totally right. Music Help Tech Guy has almost 100 videos as a beginner's course on his channel. And Music Help Tech Guy did a really good job. And I've got no interest in doing that. Although he does have like over 100,000 subscribers. So, I mean, it's a good channel. It's one of the best. There's a couple other ones too that have, beginner tutorials that have a lot of viewers. And good. I mean, we need that, but we don't need everybody to do that. That's for sure. Cool. Any other questions or anything? We're piling on the time here. We're, I think, at 1 minute away from 1 hour. So anything you guys want to talk about or look at or shoot the breeze about? Because if not, I'm going to go get a Coke Zero, non-sponsored. Can I show my modulating trick from the earlier video? Oh, so you're talking about the one where we use the MIDI effect to go to an audio track? That's the one you're talking about, right? One of my screens just went dead. Okay, I'll show you that trick real quick. So I have an instrument track. The instrument is going to be the external instrument, and the MIDI destination is the IEC driver bus channel 1, just like that. Cool. Next thing I do is set up a modulator. And I just keep it off of the basic CCs that we use for everything. And just send it down general purpose 1. Kind of arbitrary. You could use any of them that you know are not being used. So that's step number 2. I'll leave these open. So that's going out IAC now. If I opened up Pro Tools and set an IAC input, it would be going into that program. And then under Mix, I say, let's go to Automation Preferences. Nothing else is happening. I've got no other MIDI being triggered. I'm going to say Learn. And then I say Done. And you'll see the quick action, or the Automation Quick Access by default controls volume if no other automation is open. So if I go to automation mode here and say I want to do panning, then this will be a pan. And if I have 2 of these open, it still just likes the top one for the record. But any of these I can do. So I go to this one, or this one, or back to this one. And so if I do new track, audio track, it's going to do that one. And if I load on here an EQ, for instance, let's do, I'm going to clutch that for a second. Because anytime I use select a parameter, it switches to automation. So let's do, oh, all the EQ stuff shows up. Peak 3 frequency. Let's re-engage. Oh, did I do the wrong one? Peak 2 maybe. Oh, there it is. So peak 2 now, flying all over the place. And you can do different shapes. You can do a sample and hold function or square wave or whatever. Change the rate. This is not good for real-time usage. So that's what we're still missing. But it's really good if you wanted to do like touch mode and actually write this automation in. Okay, so that's the whole process. And I'll be posting this up if you look. So I don't know if it works. Let me try that real quick. The reason why I do it on one channel, of course, is because IAC driver, now that we have all of these new MIDI functionalities in the past year, in terms of assigning things by channels for the input to the mixer and things, now I'm in the habit of doing things by specific channels because IAC driver now can have 16 different things that can go to 16 different inputs. And so it's really important to start to make that change mentally. It looks like it is still working, but even with it set to all, it just the main thing is that now if I did this, so say on this channel right here, for my MIDI inputs, I'm like doing something IAC driver. I want to be able to set channel 2 for that, so that it doesn't that data from the modulator and whatever input is coming down IAC 2 don't like go into the same stream. And I did make another video about this, which clearly there was some disconnect because Ellie Winter, I don't consider you someone who can't figure out what I'm doing usually. So I may have just missed something, but the learning part is probably one of the most important things. Yeah. And I don't, when I do most of my videos, I try not to do things with key commands that often, because then people miss. It's like I don't always turn on for the screen recording what I'm doing for key commands. And so I try to walk through the actual menus most of the time. I'm in that habit of just showing it instead of key commanding it. Okay, well, unless there's anything else, let's pull the plug on this one. Thanks everybody. I'll be doing another 2-minute video probably tomorrow on something new, but the 2-minute format, and then we'll do a live stream maybe on Friday or over the weekend or something. But thanks again. Yeah, and Ellie Winter, I do want to let me know next time you're on here how it works, if you get it to work with Gatekeeper, because I'm curious about that. But let's pull the plug. See you everybody, and have a great day. I will talk to you all later. Peace.